Should we open this thing?
What's the best way to start?
We just say hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to me and my grandpa.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Tilly.
We're Pasternaks. Yeah.
And somehow we're starting a podcast.
Yeah. Tell us, how did this begin, Tilly? Well, wait. First,
Yeah.
I'm 167 pounds, 5'10", 80 years old. My birthday's in March, and I'm really excited about being here. This is pretty exciting for an 80-year-old guy to be with his 22-year-old granddaughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did this happen?
So I just graduated college back in May. I finished school. And last year, around this time, is September of last year, that Grandpa was up hanging out with me in Chicago, and we went to breakfast. And I remember we were like at breakfast and leaving, and we walked back to my house. And I said, "Have you ever heard of a podcast?" And you told me no. And I explained to you what podcasting was and gave you some recommendations of ones to listen to. And it really kind of started because you have a pretty cool life, which I'll get into in a second.
Okay.
But I always thought I was going to write a book about your life because I think it was so cool and interesting. And I think there's a lot of valuable lessons that other people could find interesting in your life. And so I was going to write a book, but I'm going to be honest, I don't read many books. So I didn't think it made sense to write a book that I would want other people to read. And so I then transitioned into the idea of making a documentary style, like sitting you down and asking you questions about how you grew up, things you did, businesses you were working in. And I thought that would be really fun, except it would take up a lot of space on wherever I was recording it and would be beneficial probably for me and not many other people. The other grandkids would like it. I think the family would really enjoy it. But I didn't feel like it really fulfilled a purpose much outside of that. And then it was kind of a few things collided of I enjoyed it. Like I thought podcasts were really entertaining. It's a big thing right now. But I also felt like it was a cool way for me to creatively express myself because I'm doing all the technical side of this, as well as it's interesting analytically to see how everything works on the back end. And so then it kind of felt right. I was like, I think I would want to start a podcast with Grandpa. And we got pretty close my junior year of college because I was studying abroad and you had traveled throughout Europe. So I did a lot of calling you. And you're on the East Coast, so you were awake very early. And the rest of my family's all in Central Time. So you were awake early as an elderly person who wakes up earlier in the morning and being on the East Coast. So you were one of the only people I could talk to earlier in my day while I was over in Italy. And I would ask you questions about your travels and what you were doing. And we got really close because, we live in different parts of the country my entire life. So I wasn't seeing you every weekend or hanging out with you every other month. We saw each other probably like 1 to 2 times a year when I was growing up. And so when I was abroad and calling you almost every day, we got really close. Mm-hmm. And so then it all kind of fell into place. I felt like it was right to start a podcast with you. And so that day I explained to you what a podcast was, and I was kind of a little nervous. I was like, what if he hates the idea of this? What if he doesn't want to do it? And I finished my senior year, and everyone else was doing the whole, like, picking their real world jobs and going into the corporate world. And I said, I'm going to start a podcast with my grandpa. And here we are.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Most of your students in your class are all hunting for jobs.
Yeah, a lot of them. It was an engineering school. It was a very kind of big deal to you pick the company you want to work with after graduation. So most people graduate with jobs. And it was a very weird thing to tell people that I wasn't graduating with like a 6-figure salary contract with a corporate company.
Yeah.
I was moving in with my grandpa.
Yeah, which is really nice for me.
Yeah.
Yes. And those of you who are watching us on camera, you might be seeing something walking back and forth on the floor or jumping up here. And this is our cat, Fraser. And
Fraser's making his podcast debut.
Yes, and he, I hate to say it, but as cat lovers know, there's no way to control Fraser.
Correct.
So he may be around, and he may never be back again. And there's also a Jack Russell Terrier named Flash who's around here, but he sees all of these cameras and lights and things, and so he's run off. But someday during the podcast. So how did you decide what you're going to wear today?
That's a really good question. Because you see, I called my mom upstairs while I was getting ready.
Oh, did you?
And I said, she's like, it's all going to be fine. I said, I really hope that my biggest problem is picking out what to wear. Because everything else is easier than this.
Yeah. Well,
there goes the cat.
How do you describe it for our listeners?
Yeah, for those of you listening, I'm wearing ripped light wash blue jeans and a purple shirt with a 80s, quite literally vintage, it's from one of my other grandparents, jacket. That's like a black kind of denim-y jacket with different paint colors all over it and like different fun lines and squares. And I'm wearing a wonderful pair of rainbow Vans that are denim and have different colors on them.
Yeah.
So I love a good outfit, but it was really hard to decide this morning because I was like, do I wear sweatpants? Do I wear business clothes? Do I wear
I had
shorts?
the same problem.
Yeah?
I did. I am wearing my pizza socks.
Yeah.
That I just got back from Rome with my wife Gladys. And so in honor of the show, I've got those pizza
Socks are a big deal to you.
It's a big deal.
We'll get into that.
Someday, yes, it is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I've got this kind of business-like striped blue long-sleeve shirt. But I figured that if I don't feel comfortable in it, I brought along my hat, my goofy hat. I'm quite a Disney fan.
Yeah, for those of you listening, Grandpa has a wide hat collection.
Yeah.
And today he brought a denim hat that has different eras of Goofy at different points in Disney.
Yes, and so I'll put that right there. I also brought, in case, Tilly said, you're too dressed up, Grandpa. Get out of that shirt. So I brought my Goofy T-shirt.
It's a brown shirt that has Goofy's face on it, quite large.
And in the back...
it's got the back of Goofy's head.
Goofy's head. And then I brought a great shirt that my friend Brent Mayer, who's a music producer and
you'll all hear from Brent next week.
Yeah, songwriter, very famous 6 or 8 time Grammy winner.
Yeah.
And one of his well-known groups from Colorado, Shell, Four Sisters, they had an album come out called Just Crazy Enough.
Yeah.
And so the T-shirt says Just Crazy Enough. And I love to, wear that everywhere. And people say, yeah, you look crazy. So that's the wardrobe choices were those this morning.
The people are going to get a good view of your closet, of your wardrobe.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. And most of the things have been given to me by family.
Yeah.
Grandchildren and children.
I would say T-shirts is one of your top gift requests.
Oh, absolutely.
For birthdays and holidays and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
You're always willing to add more T-shirts to your closet.
Well, one of the things, Tilly, that maybe we should talk about is how do people see us, watch us, communicate with us, get informed with us?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about it?
I can tell the people about it. I think, hi, Fraser. I think something kind of interesting is that we split some pretty wide generations. There's almost 60 years between us.
Wow.
And so the people who are listening, I'm hoping, are from different generations as well.
Yes.
So for those of you listening, you can listen on all of the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon. And for those of you who want to watch us and see what we look like while we're talking, you can go over to YouTube to see the full-length podcast. We'll also have it on Facebook. And then for my younger generation friends, they'll probably head over to Instagram and TikTok and see us over there. And some shorter clips that are a little more attention grabbing.
Oh, how do they find us?
Our handle is at Me and My Grandpod.
Okay.
And that's GRANDPOD, Grandpod.
Yeah, I love
like
it.
Grandpa, but Grandpod because it's a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and let's see, those of you who are crazy enough to send me a new T-shirt, you'll find my address on the
we'll put
website.
a P.O. box or something so that if people want to send you fan mail, Grandpa, they can send you fan mail.
Well, I was hoping for T-shirts, but the fan mail.
But that could be a part of it.
Yeah,
they can send fan mail as T-shirts.
I can. That's going to be great.
For those of you who want to send Grandpa T-shirts,
yes,
go find the address in our YouTube bio.
There you go. Well, okay.
So what questions do you have about podcasting? I mean, this is my first podcast, so I don't have all the answers. But is there anything else that you're like, how does this work? Or I just sit here until he tells me to start talking.
Well, I honestly thought that was it.
Okay.
I thought.
How people can find us?
Yeah. How can they find us? Mm-hmm. I think I'd really be interested in questions from our viewers and our followers.
Yeah, so
if they would like to
the cool
know.
thing is we can ask them. We can tell them to comment and ask us things. So today's the 1st of November when this is getting posted. So it's fall time. Thanksgiving's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably tell people, like, comment questions you have for us in general, but maybe some Thanksgiving style questions or like let us know what you're thankful for.
Yeah. Well, Halloween.
Halloween just happened.
It just happened.
This is getting put out on November
That's
1st.
right.
So yesterday was Halloween.
I'll have to tell you about my Halloween.
I have no clue what I'm going to be, what I was for Halloween this past weekend. By the time this gets launched, I'm hoping I had something fun to wear.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah. The time difference is funky.
Well, grandfathers live today in a kind of fog.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's not that I mean they're foggy. What I mean is the role of the grandparent, just a few generations ago was so different from what it appears to be today.
Yeah.
It used to be the grandparent lived close by or within the family.
Yeah.
And almost took on the role of being second parents.
Yeah.
Kids come home from school, grandparents were nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Today, most kids hardly know their grandparents.
I think it's hard, and it all depends on where they live, because now more than ever, families live in different parts of the country here in America. I think in other parts of the world, it's a little bit different, but I mean, I had 3 sets of grandparents, because you were divorced when my father was little, so I was blessed with 3 sets instead of the normal 2 that most people get.
Yeah.
So I lived closer to my mom's family, and then both my dad's sets of parents live in other parts of the country. So I only see you guys 1 to 2 times a year.
Yeah.
Seeing you guys less, it's weird. It's hard to, as a grandchild, to feel like you have these people who are your family, but like you don't know them because you don't ever see them.
Yeah. So this is really super for me.
Yeah.
We're really getting to know each other.
We are.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
Yeah, she has a totally different time life. I'm up at 6 a.m.
That's an interesting one.
heading off to the dog park with my Jack Russell Terrier.
And no matter what, even in my morning girl era, I'm not waking up at 6 a.m. at all.
Yeah.
I love you, but when I would come visit, I would wake up early to go to the dog park with you, because I was like, I only have a limited amount of days with Grandpa. Like, I want to spend time with him. So I'd set an alarm and sacrifice my sleep and get up and go to the dog park to hang out with you and the dogs.
Yeah.
But now that I live here full time, I do not need to sacrifice my sleep to go to the dog park with you.
Yeah.
And
Well, let me ask you a question.
yeah.
What would you like to see this podcast focus on? Or as we describe its
Yeah.
characteristics, its hope for outcomes, the dreams you might have about what we're doing. Why are we here?
I mean, I think kind of as I stated before, the biggest thing is the concept of documenting you and your life and luckily in a podcast dynamic, like our relationship. So I tell people that like, I'm hoping that this makes me enough money so that I don't have to go get a different full-time job. I want this to be my full-time job and it to be a fun job. And so I just told everyone when I was leaving to come move here, I was like, I'm hoping to just get paid to hang out with my grandpa, if I'm being real. Like that's the goal. But really it's a bigger purpose than that. I think in our conversations, I'm hoping that it sheds some light on the idea of familial relationships and intergenerational relationships. I'm hoping it inspires people to maybe reach out to a family member that they haven't talked to in a while or don't feel super close with. It may be awkward or they don't know them very well, but I would say go ahead and do it, because the worst thing that happens is they say they're not in the mood to have a relationship, but the best thing that happens is you could be sitting on a couch starting a podcast, hanging out all the time.
You go.
To me, that's a really cool thing. I also think hopefully with the idea of us having some form of revenue through the podcast, we'll be able to give back financially to different charities and foundations and spaces where we think sending funds would help people in different ways. I know we have very different backgrounds, which are very interesting, and so I know we'll get into that. But also we're interviewing some pretty cool people. And so I'm hoping not only will we be able to share their cool lives with the world, but then people will benefit from the information and knowledge that they have.
Yeah. I think when I began to think about what it's almost like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
If I ask listeners that are in your age group, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and maybe even 40-year-olds, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to influence those in my generation to still consider that question. What do you want to be? If I could influence people in my generation, as well as those in your generation, to overcome extraordinary challenges and to be successful, that it's the times of our lives.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't know what we should call ourselves. Are people who do podcast announcers, or
We're podcasters.
Podcasters. I really think I'd rather be a podcastologist. That would be fit me.
Based on your history, you would be a podcastologist.
And you can be too. We'll think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it. Anyway, I want to. As I thought about what we were doing, I thought I get such pleasure out of talking with people who have created their successes.
Yeah.
Kind of regardless of the topic, whether they're artists or whether they're actors or whether they're doctors or researchers or those in sports or other professions.
Yeah.
And, especially those who've shown great courage and are kind of bold and overcome great challenges. So I've kind of even thought about having some people from time to time on our podcast and ask them some questions like, what kept you up during the night?
Yeah.
What were you thinking about? Where did you get the courage to do what you did?
Mm-hmm.
And rather than giving you the list of some of the people, it's really interesting as we tell people that we're going to do this podcast,
Yeah.
and that we really want to spend some of our time talking about people who've gotten great ideas or great energy and how they did it.
Yeah.
Then they begin to tell us about their story.
Yeah.
Or they begin to tell us, I know somebody.
Mm-hmm. We have some cool guests coming.
Yeah.
I don't know how many details we can release about our guests next week. As you said, we're talking to Brent next week. So for those of you who want to tune in next Wednesday, you'll see the podcast with Brent Mayer.
So if you got a real cool thing going on, invite us.
We're going to podcast on the road. So
Yeah.
we can have people invite us to their
I'll tell you something else that I'd really like to do.
What do you want to do?
If you'll let me.
Yeah.
And you might want to do this too.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy listening to music.
You do. You're a music fan.
I am. And walking on the beach or taking the dog for a walk, whatever, or even
Riding
in the
your
house.
bike, yeah.
Yeah, riding my bike or even in the shower.
Yeah. I think most people listen to music
Yeah.
at least during some portion of their day.
I would like to.
Yeah.
I would like to just take a few moments,
Yeah.
each of our podcasts, and tell you about a line or two from a song
Yeah.
that is really
Okay.
really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's really great
Yeah.
because I'm a lover. And most of these lines,
A lot of songs are love songs or songs that have to do with love.
yeah.
Yeah.
So can I tell you one right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to sing it to you because...
Do we have a name for this bit? Should we call it something? If you guys want to give us a good name for the time in the podcast where we talk about music lines. So without further ado, Grandpa, take it away. Give me your
Okay,
give me
well,
your
this
line.
morning,
This morning.
I'm walking along.
Yeah.
Elton John is singing.
Elton John, everybody.
Elton John, name of the song is Your Song. And Elton John wrote the melody for this song.
Yeah.
And his partner, Bernie Taupin, he wrote the words.
Okay.
And this is their very first top 10 in the world hit.
Yeah.
Is the song Your Song. And in there is a line that says, how wonderful life is while you're in the world. I mean, that's pretty heavy. I mean, those of you who want to reach out to a girl tonight, or a girl reach out to a guy, and you really want to hit him, and you feel these words,
Yeah.
you know, and he writes this song to give to a woman because he doesn't have anything more of value. So he says, I'm going to write this as my gift to you. And he says, I hope you don't mind.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind how wonderful life is while you're in the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a powerful one. Do you want me to find one on the fly?
If you got one.
I'll find one quick for you.
Okay. Let's, because...
I've told you about this person before that I listened to.
Okay.
And her name is Renee Rapp, for anyone listening. And she is about to be. The movie's coming out this January in Mean Girls, the musical, the movie.
Yeah.
And she just released her debut album, Snow Angel. And she has some phenomenal vocal cords, that woman does. And so I am going to real quick find you a lyric that I think is amazing. I'm reading this real quick. Okay. I found it. What are you laughing at?
I don't know. It just seemed funny.
Okay. So this one's a little less lovey.
Okay.
But this song is she said it's like a love letter to herself. And I really relate to it because I also have like a weird love for willow trees, and I feel like they like weeping willows. Like they have a lot of things for depressed people and people with anxiety that just feel very like synonymous with our lives. But one of the lines she says is, you don't have to use your own tears just to grow your own roots. Just keep your passion for flowers and it'll patch up your youth. And I think that concept, I mean, it's not about being in love, but it's about that idea of like your sadness or things that go wrong don't have to define you as a person. Like you can be a better person through the pain, but it doesn't mean that like the pain didn't happen or you can't let yourself be sad sometimes.
Okay.
But Renee Rapp, everybody, and Elton John.
Yeah.
Those are our lyrics today.
Yes.
So I want to get into you a little bit.
Okay.
Because you've lived like 4 times as long as I have, almost.
Okay.
And you have a pretty interesting life, Gramps.
Yep.
So you grew up in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Was it like a 1-bedroom apartment or like a studio apartment when you?
On the west side of Chicago?
Yeah, when you were really
Well,
little.
there were 5 of us.
Yeah.
3 kids.
Yeah. You're a middle child like me.
Yeah. 3 kids. My first 10 years, my brother was 2 years older.
Yeah.
My sister 4 years younger. My mother and father. And we all lived in 1 bedroom.
I was going to say it was a
Just
1-bedroom apartment.
We had a little kitchen.
And your parents, your dad sold items. He was a salesman. He sold items made by blind people.
Yeah. A part of his life, his
For those of you that
earlier
don't
life,
know,
he
sales is a
had a
big
little
part of
flower
our
shop and a
family
and a
lineage.
produce. He sold fruit.
We're salespeople. That's what we are, Gramps.
Yeah, and
It's in our blood.
he was a door-to-door sales guy.
Yeah.
And happiest man you ever saw.
Yeah.
Always whistled as he came home.
Yeah.
And we had a little room other than the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And the kitchen.
Yeah.
And we lived there. I was there the 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
And I never thought we were poor.
Mm-hmm.
Every day my mother would say something to the effect, a couple of things. One, she'd always tell me that she loved me best.
Yeah.
The most, yes. And it wasn't until I was in college I found out she used to tell my sister and brother the same
she
thing.
was just playing you all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she always had us. We were the first kids in the family ever in an extended family who went to college.
Yeah.
And my father never went to school.
Yeah.
A half a year in a
Well, he was an
Cleveland-
immigrant, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he went half a year to school.
Yeah.
About the 5th grade.
Yeah.
He lasted about 5 months before his father took him out and made him work in the tailor shop
Yeah.
out
And
of
then-
school.
And then, so your dad did all of 1 semester of education as a young child.
Yeah.
And he came here when he was very young with his father.
Yeah.
And then you were raised, you spent the early years in a 1-bedroom apartment with your 2 siblings and your parents.
Yeah.
And then your mom lied to the DMV when you were like 12.
Well, you're really jumping. Boy, wow.
Well, we
Closer to 14.
We only got an hour to talk to these
Okay,
people.
well, but
Your mom lied to the DMV and said that you were old enough to drive and you weren't
Well, it
yet.
wasn't a lie. You walk in with your mother and she says, "Hi, everybody, we're here. Michael's 16. It's time to have his license."
But you were not 16 yet.
No.
You weren't 15 yet either.
No, but nobody ever brought
No.
They didn't ask for a
This was a
birth
long time ago.
certificate. Well, I'm old. They didn't have a computer or a
Respectfully,
list.
I'm just gonna quote that.
Nobody walked around
Grandpa
with
himself said he's old, everyone.
nobody walked around with a birth certificate in the 19.
So
What,
your mom
50s?
lied to the DMV and you drove before you were supposed to.
Yes.
But it's okay. You went on some adventures.
Yes,
which
but
we'll
we
get
could talk
into.
about some other time.
And then
But-
you graduated school early at 16. You finished high school.
Yeah.
Which some people nowadays would associate with being highly intelligent.
Well, yes.
But you also like to say that they just didn't have room for you at school.
That just moved me up a few grades.
Yeah. They were like, Michael, he'll survive a little later in this grade. Then you graduated high school at 16.
Yeah.
You went to Michigan State for your bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And you're
going to run through this whole thing. You're going to bore everybody.
I'm just giving the spark notes.
Okay.
You got married before you graduated.
Yeah.
You graduated. You were a federal agent.
Okay.
You went back to grad school.
Yeah.
You became an author.
Yeah.
You were a professor.
Yeah.
Then you decided...
Well, you kind of skipped my school. I was a school teacher and then
You were
a
a school
school
teacher.
administrator. And then,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I went to back.
Yeah. And then you decided that you were just gonna take a quick left and skip everything that you had just worked on, and you were gonna start a company.
Yes.
And we'll get into the origin story a little deeper, a different podcast episode, maybe with
Okay.
Alan.
Yeah.
And you spent some time
Yeah.
searching for a new passion, a new project, and you landed on socks. Socks, everybody.
Yeah.
And you started a sock company, a hosiery company
Yeah.
called Socks Galore and More.
Yeah.
And you ran this company. You had stores all over the country and in a few other countries. And that was a big thing for you.
Yeah.
And then you decided you were going to sell that company and you retired.
Yes.
And meanwhile, at some point during there, you remarried and raised Arabian horses and
Yeah.
competed horses and competed dogs
Yeah.
and traveled the entire world. Been
Yeah.
to every continent except for Antarctica.
Yeah.
You have no interest in going to Antarctica,
That's correct.
which I think is kind of funny and weird, but go for it, Gramps. You've done it all. Why not check it all off to say you did everything?
Okay.
But you did all that, and then for most people, they'd be like, that's more than 3 lifetimes full of events. Then you decided that you would start the Facial Pain Research Foundation for trigeminal neuralgia, which I know is something very near and dear to your heart and something our family values a lot, your work with them. And I know there's a lot of people who are grateful for the work that you did in creating support groups for people with TN, as well as the research foundation itself to try and find a cure for what was at one point the world's most painful disease, the suicide disease. It was named at one point.
Yeah.
And then you decided that you were going to take care of the family and do some stuff you needed to do personally. And then you decided to let your 22-year-old granddaughter move in with you. And now you're starting a podcast.
Well,
At 80 years old, this is your biggest career venture.
Well, I think you asked me the other day something about wisdom.
Yeah, we've been talking about
Yeah.
the concept of wisdom.
And I remember my freshman year in college, I had an economics professor who wrote the book that everybody used around the country.
Yeah.
And he was kind of a ham up on stage. And one day he said, I want you to know, as smart as I am, the only thing I could be certain of
Yeah.
is that tomorrow morning the sun will either come up or it won't.
Yeah.
And so that's a long time ago. It's the only thing I agree
Yeah.
that I'm certain of. And so I'm not sure just being wise or being knowledgeable is anywhere near as important as having an imagination.
Yeah. You value imagination really highly.
Yeah. And I think that as we begin to look at my life and we look at the lives of others that are going to be joining us,
Yeah.
we're going to see how these people kind of reached inside themselves
Yeah.
and looked at their values and said, what's really important to me? And then created behaviors that were consistent with those values.
Yeah.
And so that's my lecture.
On imagination.
And on wisdom today. I think just because you're old doesn't mean you have wisdom.
That's true.
Yeah.
I would very much agree with that. But just because you're young doesn't mean you don't have wisdom.
Okay.
I think that young people...
I think we're going to get into that. I think we're
Don't
going to
get
have
enough
some
credit.
incredible young people who
Yeah.
already have made incredible strides in their life and
Yeah.
are very happy and strong.
What's something that I don't know about you?
Oh.
I'll let you think about it. I didn't talk to you about it beforehand.
No, something you don't know about me. Did I tell you the reason why I went to Michigan State University? My friends, Buzz Thompson,
Yeah.
and another friend, Jack Allen,
Yeah.
and we drove up to Michigan State from the Chicago area because our high school English teacher had gone to Michigan State.
Mm.
And so we drove up there.
Yeah.
And we got on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And we drove around the campus, and in the center of the campus is a big tower.
Yeah.
And it was about 3 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And there were co-eds laying on blankets all around the tower necking.
Mm.
And we said, this looks like a great college.
Because there were people kissing on the lawn.
Yes, and we turned around and drove back to Chicago. And we all applied to go to school there. That's how.
Oh my.
That was it. That's how we made our college decision.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'd be curious how many boys consider gender ratios when they pick a school. Because I know a lot of people that chose not to go to specific schools because there weren't enough girls there.
Oh, and you certainly were outnumbered 85-1 at the Milwaukee School of Engineering.
It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that steep. It was more of like 70-30 or like 25-75.
Yeah.
But there were multiple men more than there were girls.
But that wasn't part of your decision.
No, my decision to go to an engineering college had nothing to do with the ratio of males to females.
Well, what was your major reason for going to Milwaukee?
Have I ever told you the story of how I found Milwaukee School of Engineering?
No.
I took my mother to the hospital.
Okay.
She thought she was having a heart attack or something.
Oh my.
And she was fine, but we're sitting in the hospital and they're running tests on her. And I was in my junior year of looking at colleges. And as you know, I spent 7 years in robotics. All of middle school and high school,
Yes.
I spent doing robotics, among other activities. But I was big. I was deep in the engineering space as a young human. And I was looking at schools. And originally, I wanted to go to college for commercial photography. And when I told my father that, he was like, roll the dice again, like spin the wheel. You did not just spend 7 years being a brilliant, like little engineer to tell me that you want to go take pictures professionally. Like really, you have some better skills than that, Tilly. Uh-huh. And so I went back and I looked, and I looked at MSOE because I figured they would have a robotics scholarship. That's a big part of choosing a school, is the financial impact that it has. And so I went and looked at their website, and they have a few other majors outside of engineering, but I knew I didn't want to go into direct engineering. My older brother's a mechanical engineer, and I love him, but I knew that flat engineering wasn't the right path for me. And so I found the UX program at MSOE. And user experience, I like to say, is a very middle zone. I get to be the middle person between engineers and normal people. So I help the engineers understand what normal people need, and I help normal people understand what the engineers are doing. And my time in robotics really helped me with that because I understood all the technical things happening with our robot. But always, for those of you who don't know what FIRST Robotics is, it's a very student-oriented program that also encourages public speaking and the ability to take initiative and ownership over your work as a student engineer. And they have judges walk around these competitions and ask you questions about your robot or about what your team does for outreach or various other things. And so you have to be able to answer them and understand how to explain them in a way that someone who doesn't know what a gearbox is or what the electrical components of a robot are for them to understand. So I had these beautiful, beautiful skills that I got. And I saw the UX program and I was like, that's it. That's the one I'm going to do. And I fell in love with it and basically decided I was going there before I even toured. I should have done a little more research on other UX programs, but it's such a new major and such a new concept because a lot of companies have UX. And I mean, at the forefront, like Apple is one of the kings of UX in everything that they do. Their user experience is at the forefront of their purpose and their work. And it's really hard to find academic programs because schools take so long to adapt to what's happening in industry, and industry is always ever changing. So academic programs tend to be behind what's cutting edge in industry. So the fact that this program even existed, like I'm so lucky to be alive for so many reasons. I'm lucky my parents had me. I'm lucky that I live in America. I'm lucky that I was born at a time where girls were allowed to be in engineering spaces. Being a woman in STEM was highly difficult, but highly impactful for, I think, the success of everything that I've worked on in my life. But I found the program and I was like sitting in the hospital with my mom and I was like, I think I like this UX thing. And she was like, okay. And so I scheduled a tour, but I came down here to Florida. I toured 8 Florida schools in 3 days over spring break. It was Easter. We did Disney and then drove up to your house for Easter. And then I was touring schools. And then I flew home. And I only liked one school in Florida. And I got in, but it didn't have a program that I was in love with. And my only requirement for college initially was to go somewhere warm. So where you found people kissing on the lawn as something that was important, I just said somewhere warmer than Chicago. And then I found a program I loved and I went colder. I went north. And so I ended up at MSOE, and COVID really threw a wrench in things. My grade is the year where it was my freshman year where COVID kicked us off campus.
Yeah.
And so then I spent, part of freshman year there, part of freshman year back home. All of my sophomore year, I lived at home and did school online because none of my classes were in person. My entire junior year, I studied abroad in Europe. I was in Italy. And then my senior year, I was back and I was an RA, which was one of the most fun things that I could have possibly done. I had so much fun. And it was a lot of fun, though. And I worked different jobs on campus. I worked different internships and jobs throughout college. And now I'm starting a podcast with my grandpa.
Aren't you lucky?
I do feel very lucky. I feel very, very lucky.
That's a great story.
Yeah. I wish I would have been cooler and picked a college based on people kissing in the lawn, but I did not do that.
You got to remember, it was 1959.
That's a long time ago.
It was a different world.
Yeah.
And we'll probably tap into that a little bit from time to time.
We absolutely will.
Yeah.
I posted on my personal Instagram story to ask some friends for some questions.
Okay.
Do you want to know what people my age are asking?
Yeah, sure.
Some of these are funny. Some of them I can't ask because they're not podcast appropriate. You know who you are. But let's see. What is something you feel like you're working toward now?
Wow. Well, obviously, this podcast.
Yeah, this has been a big thing.
It's important.
Yeah.
I think I am part of a research foundation that's doing research, approximately 90 different research projects in the United States, Canada, and elsewhere.
Yeah.
To try to find cures for trigeminal neuralgia, a neuropathic pain condition.
Yeah.
And my creative energies go into that world. And now they're here.
Yeah.
I think
I think I'm gonna be honest. This is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
I think I'm happy about this as much as it's been nerve-wracking.
You asked me about technology.
Yeah.
And how I felt about it.
Yeah. As an 80-year-old, you witnessed a time where there wasn't a lot of technology around.
Well, I think my father-in-law, who was born like in 1910.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like, if he was alive today, he'd be 110?
113.
Okay, so I asked him, maybe he just, I asked him, Dado, we called him Dado.
Yeah.
I said, Dado, what was the greatest invention
Yeah.
of your lifetime? Now, he lived into the 90s.
Yeah.
So, to 2000 and something.
Yeah.
And so asked him, what was the greatest invention of your lifetime? And he said, the airplane.
Yeah, he did.
Yep, the airplane. And what it meant to the world.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting for me and my age group.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that technology today it's changing so rapidly and advancing so rapidly. And I'm lucky to have family members that are designers and engineers. And I certainly am watching very closely the research being done to find cures.
Yeah.
And so many
In the medical field.
Yes, and a lot of that has to do with technology, the speed up of being able to deal with genetics.
Yeah.
And so I think it's wonderful. However, I think it scares the hell out of people
Yeah.
who are elderly. I sent an email
Yeah.
to an old friend, and she's in her mid-80s,
Yeah.
and told her about our podcast. She's scared to death.
You've been telling a lot of people about our podcast.
Yes, and we could talk more about telling more people, but she's scared to death of it.
Really?
Oh yeah, she does. In fact, she's angry about it.
Really?
She's angry that she believes it's depersonalizing communications, that people aren't personal enough
Interesting.
in being able to discuss.
Yeah.
Rather than discussing on the telephone, they're sending short 3-4 word messages, sometimes not even words,
Yeah.
back and forth with people to communicate.
Yeah.
And so she hates it. And I think I think that's a shame,
Yeah.
because she's afraid and doesn't have the support system in her life. She doesn't have kids, and she doesn't have, and the kids
Yeah.
can make all the difference in the world of saying, here, Grandpa, this is how this works.
Yeah.
You do that to me all the time.
I do.
Yeah. Just think of the things that you try to.
And I'll say you're very technologically advanced. Like compared to people your age, compared to anyone above 60, you're thriving.
Yes.
You know how to send emails and text messages and take pictures of things, and
Yeah.
you're doing pretty good.
I think some of that really has come from me dealing with Apple.
You are an Apple guy.
Oh,
Apple,
And-
if you're hearing this,
yes.
Michael Pasternak
But
would
I
like a
wasn't
sponsorship.
always an Apple guy. I had family members who could help me with non-Apple stuff.
Correct.
But as time went on, I was so dependent on them. I was taking up all their time.
They do
And
a really
and
great
they had
job
jobs.
supporting people who need help with their devices.
Yes, and so I went
Not
to Apple.
sponsored.
Finally, one of my kids said, "Go to Apple,"
Yeah.
and we bought computers and phones, and they had classes, and
Yeah.
they can say, "Here, let us help you." And,
Yeah. For those of you who might have elderly family who aren't good with technology, highly recommend send them to Apple and let the Apple Genius Bar take care of them.
Oh, and they like us.
Yeah.
And every now and then you run into somebody who's older than 60 working there.
Yeah.
They hire people, and sometimes 70.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's pretty crazy.
it is great.
So most people your age are probably a little bit fearful of technology.
Sure.
And how do you feel about the concept of things like artificial intelligence that are moving at just such a rapid pace in our country?
Well, I that's a big question.
Yeah.
That's not a short question.
No.
I think it's going to happen.
Okay.
And I think we should we should do everything we can to use it the best we can.
Okay.
I think if it helps solve more social problems, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. Maybe we can get some folks.
We'll get into it. I have some
helping.
friends. I have some friends who are pretty cool in the AI space.
Yeah.
My college has a supercomputer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like an artificial intelligence. It was a big deal.
What are some things it might be able to do?
I worked on a research team that worked on something called video frame interpolation. So it takes a video
Okay.
and it looks at its individual frames
Okay.
in the video, and then it uses the artificial intelligence to create a new frame in between them. So something that's shot in only 20 frames per second or 30 frames per second, it can go put new frames in so it can double the frame rate or raise the frame rate so that the video looks smoother.
Okay.
So that was kind of a fun project that I got to work on.
Yeah.
But other people did other things. Other people worked in music AI generation.
Uh-huh.
Some people worked in medical AI. So they looked at different types of medical scans and let the AI understand correlations between what are already like diagnosed positive tests from doctors. And it used that information so that it could teach itself to be able to diagnose digitally different things based on information in the scans.
Wow.
And that stuff excites me a lot because it's really cool that we can work in that direction. And it's not 100% because we're humans and humans make mistakes, and you're feeding human-made things into a technology. So there's always going to be little issues, and humans code the technology, so there's errors there. But
Okay.
it's cool that it's going in a positive direction. I think it's something we'll definitely be touching on and talking about because it's affecting every industry.
All right. How did we do on our first day?
I think for a first day it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Speaking of first days,
Yeah.
to round this out, do you have a first day of something that you did or like a place you were for the first time where you were like, that was a memorable first time for a good or bad reason? It can be anything.
Well, I think the first time I was up in a glider.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be up in a glider and sitting there and the plane that you are attached to releases you.
Yeah.
And now you're over the Rocky Mountains and you're soaring.
Yeah.
I could say like an eagle, but and to be able to, and with no sound, no engine,
Yeah.
and just floating up there, that was the first time.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that, being free.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
it is. Good question.
Yeah. I was gonna say my first job, I was a lifeguard. And to become a lifeguard, you have to take a test. You have to be able to swim a certain amount, like in laps. You have to be able to dive a certain amount at the pool I worked at because we had a diving well. You had to do all these different tasks. And I grew up being able to swim because I grew up camping. I had to be able to swim in the pool in the lake with all the older kids. But I was not like a swim team athlete or majorly athletic by any means. So of course there were kids that were becoming lifeguards that had swim on swim teams. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I somehow survived the laps without dying. Because there were some people who were like tapping out. They were like, I can't do this anymore. Being a lifeguard is not for me. The diving got me.
Yeah.
Diving in the well. It was over 12 feet deep or something like that. It was insanely deep for a normal pool.
Yeah.
And you have to go all the way down to the bottom and get a brick off the floor and bring it up and then tread water with the brick in your hand. And I could tread no problem, but getting down there, the pressure on your ears is just immense, and it was just a lot. And so it took me a few tries, and my friends were all cheering me on. And even like the people who were helping run the tests were like, you got this, like take a second to breathe. Because it was very overwhelming with everyone else.
Yeah.
Because all these other kids could do it, and then I felt weird that I was the only one who couldn't do it. But I did it. I did it multiple times because you have to retest.
Nice.
Speaking of flying, though, I did go flying for the first time this year.
Yes.
I love flying in planes. I've taken many a flight. When I studied abroad, I didn't go more than like a week and a half without flying somewhere. I was on planes every other week. for basically a whole year. I was flying all the time. But I, in an auction, you won me a test flight.
Yes.
And I went before I made the move down here. I went to an airport and got in a plane, and I flew a plane.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because I absolutely loved it.
Cool.
And a funny thing for those of you who don't know how to fly a plane is that when they drive it on the tarmac, like when you're going out to take off or when you're coming back, the wheel in front of the pilots doesn't do anything. The wheel does nothing. The wheel is only for like in the air. So it's all your feet. So you're steering with your pedals, which was really weird after spending years driving a car. I was like, this is funky. So who knows? If the podcast goes well, I might be getting my pilot's license because that could be a good second career.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great fun.
Yeah. I'm excited for this. Next week we'll be in Nashville with Brent.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you guys will stick along with us. So if you could hit the like button on whatever platform you're watching, or subscribe if you're on YouTube. You can follow us on each of the platforms, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you, Grandpa, for hanging out with me. This is me and my grandpa. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. You want to wave to him?